Please tell us something more about Kailash Parvat and Maa Parvati.
Kailash is the earthly abode of Lord Shiv, but interestingly, that was not his first residence on earth.
You know, it is you're talking about Narada Muni. I think he's very wrongly portrayed.
No, unfortunately, things will only change when the depiction in the serials
Yes.
changes.
If someone wants to start reading Puran, where should we start from?
So Vishnu Puran, I would suggest, but
And I think education system should make better human beings,
yeah.
not machines and.
Again, when we're talking about the Lokas, it clearly tells us there's multiverse. There's multiple universes. And now I think science is kind of catching up.
We still get a lot of messages saying that, how can you worship this god but fear this god? And I'm like,
I personally know a family, whose child actually used to tell them about his past life and how he died.
Hari Om, we have Vineet Ji with us, and he has written 4 books. In fact, he has decoded the Purans. Now, we talk about the Puran, but he has given a detailed knowledge behind the esoteric meaning and how does it work in our life. Thank you on such a short notice that you said yes. And
My pleasure, completely, Bhavesh.
And more than that is Mahashivratri, and when it comes to Puran, you are the perfect person. So, very excited.
That's kind of you. So I am happy to be here.
Very, very grateful. So, can you share something about the Puran? Let's talk about Puran, what it is, how it is, and what is your favorite Puranic story regarding Mahashivratri?
So first of all, wishing everyone a very happy Mahashivratri. The audience, everybody who's watching, a very happy Mahashivratri to everybody. Shivaratri, as the name itself suggests, is associated with Lord Shiv. And the Shiv Puran, which is the principal Puran related to Lord Shiv and his pastimes, his family also. A lot of stories are there. So it tells us that Shivaratri actually is a monthly affair. And on Chaturdashi, the Krishna Paksha Chaturdashi, so which is the dark fortnight of the month, on the 14th day, 14th night, is when Shivaratri is celebrated. And Shivaratri is celebrated on the Tithi when it crosses the midnight. When Chaturdashi is crossing the midnight, that is the day Shivaratri is celebrated. So when we have Shivaratris every month, what is special about Mahashivratri? So that is the next question, right? So in the Shiv Puran, it is mentioned that every Shivaratri, so the story actually comes from the Devas. It starts with the Devas going to Lord Shiv and asking for help for the humans, for the mortals who are living in Kali Yuga. And the Devas, especially Indra, he leads his associates to Kailash, and all of them are surrounding Lord Shiv. And they're asking him that, with the degradation that Kali Yuga brings, how would it be possible for humans to follow the rituals, the grand yagnas, the thousands of years of tapasyas, which they don't have the lifetime for anymore in Kali Yuga. And, most of the rituals are difficult to perform for people in Kali Yuga. And prolonged fasting is also very difficult for us. People find it very difficult to keep on Navratri fast also. 9 days also is very difficult for people. So they are asking for a solution for people in Kali Yuga. And Indra asks Shiva about a simple procedure, a simple ritual that could help people achieve the same result that a more elaborate ritual in a different yuga would have done. So that's the origin of the story. And then Shiva says that, yes, there is a day like that, which could help people. And that day is Shivaratri, which is the Chaturdashi. And on Shivaratri night, in Shiv Puran, it's mentioned that Shiva himself permeates each and every lingam that is there in the world. So that's a very powerful night for worshipping Shiva. And because Shiva manifests himself in each and every lingam that is there in the world. So if you actually offer prayers, you go there and offer prayers in the night. You offer water, you offer, bilva leaves, you offer flowers, simple things, you don't have to do anything elaborate. You get the benefit of, and of course you have to fast for the day and the night. So you get the benefit of performing 100, Ashwamedh Yajnas, etc. So God, is very kind. A lot of people don't understand God. A lot of people don't connect with God in a personal manner. But, because we have this concept of an angry, judgmental God who's, sitting in the high heavens
And
and
punishing you all
and
the time.
punishing you for all the misdeeds. So, yeah, see, your karma is there. You can't escape it, whether good or bad. But God makes it easier for you to connect. In every yuga, the rules change for your ease. For our benefit, God has made it possible to associate with him or her, if you want to call, in a way that is possible to follow in that yuga. So in Kali Yuga, simple Nam Jap, name chanting is sufficient. So Shivaratri comes from that perspective that, it's a simple ritual and just one day and night of fasting and worshipping the lingam especially is enough to grant you a place in the abode of Shiva. So there are many stories in the Shiv Puran regarding this.
Why there is so much fear of God? Like, why do people fear? And especially any God, there's a fear. So is it ignorance? That is very true. But according to you, why?
I think, as you said, first of all is ignorance. A lot of people don't read the scriptures. And for various reasons, we have always been taught moral lessons, which end in something really drastic, that if you don't do this, this will happen. And, even if you read the Vrat Kathas, there's always a kind of scare that, if you break the fast, something bad will happen. But that's not actually the right approach. In the Purans, it's not the way you are meant to associate with God. God is like a parent, so parents can be strict sometimes when you are being naughty. But otherwise, you're supposed to connect with God through love and devotion and friendship and, the fraternal bond. So there's different types of mokshas that are there, right? So, and most of them involve you being directly connected with God in various capacities. So I think that's why the ignorance is there, that, people don't read. And we have always been brought up with that kind of a fear that, about judgment, about hell and heaven, especially in the Western society. These concepts are very strong. So, and I feel that's also a reason a lot of people turn into atheists, because they feel, what kind of God is this, who's just sitting and passing judgment on us. But in Sanatan Dharma, God is not meant to be seen like that. And God is not that, right? God is the existence of the entire universe is for the pleasure of God. Why would he's not a sadistic personality, right? He's doing everything for love, for enhancing our own experiences. I feel that's why
How is your personal relationship with Shiv? Or any personal experiences you want to share, if you want to share?
I've been fortunate enough to have some really deep experiences, but maybe not, of a physical nature, but it's more, when you're in a trance, when you're in a meditative state, that you feel certain energies and you feel connected to God in a more subtle way. But when I was writing my book, one of my books on Parshuram Ji, and there's this episode when Parshuram is praying to Shiva, right, when he gets the axe.
Yes, true.
So in the book, I have made it a little more relatable in the sense I haven't shown him going to Shiv Lok or Kailash, which is what happens in the Puran. But I've in the story, he's just meditating and he connects with Shiva in the trance state. And that actually happened with me, So I've written down my own experiences, passed it off as Parshuram Ji's experience.
Beautiful.
But it was surreal, and it's almost like being in a different galaxy, you're seeing Shiva towering above the universe. And so people who would read probably would understand what I'm saying. But again, you have to feel that, to realize that these things exist. A lot of people scoff at these experiences, that you would share.
I believe experiences is a space beyond intellect. And it is something so profound and so personal to a sadhak. Only those who go through it will know that something has happened.
Completely.
And I believe it should not be shared because Now we are talking about it. I'm glad you shared it, but people don't accept it. And I
Yes.
think those who know it will enjoy it.
Yeah.
Those who don't understand will write something and it's not meant for them. This is what I'm understanding with time.
Exactly. I think everyone has their own phases of life, and they have their own journey in the path of spirituality, and they'll understand when they are meant to.
You just mentioned something very interesting. Now, when you talk about Vaikunth, that is where Vishnu is residing beautifully. How is the Shiv Lok? What is your understanding?
So, from the Shiv Puran, it's actually a grand lok, just like the Vaikunth.
Yeah.
But Vaikunth is, we imagine Vaikunth in the, Kshir Sagar.
Yes.
But the Purans, they give so many specifics. And if I go deeper into them, we can spend a whole podcast on it. But Vaikunth is actually outside this universe. And similarly, there's Shiv Lok, which is outside this universe. There's Mani Dweep, which is the abode of Devi,
Yes.
which is also outside the material creation, I would say. Yeah. So within the material creation, of course, Shiva and Vishnu and Devi and Brahma, they reside in Lokas. But outside the material creation exist these worlds, the Shiv Lok, the Vaikunth, and the Mani Dweep. So Shiv Lok has been described in a grand manner. There's towering doorkeepers, there's massive palaces, there's, all these well-built ganas, protecting, and, like Nandi. A lot of people feel or think that Nandi is the bull.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not the case. Nandi is a gana.
True.
And the bull is also called Nandi because he's the offspring of Nandini. But Nandi, the gana, is different. And you see the mythological serials, they're just mixing it up. They'll show they'll show Nandi as a man and sometimes as a bull.
Converting into a bull and running.
But they're actually two different entities.
Can you throw some light on it?
So we'll keep going into tangents. But I'll cover it later maybe. But then Shiv Lok, so that's where, Shiva is surrounded by all his associates, and the close associates, of course, Shakti is there, Devi is there, Karthikeya is there, Ganpati is there, Nandi is there. And there's other associates like Bhringi, there's, other ganas that are there. And interesting thing is that, all these lokas in the Shiv Puran, they're like right next to each other. So there's Shiv Lok, and on its left is the Mani Dweep, on its right is the Vaikunth, and close by is Golok, Vrindavan, which is, according to Bhagavad Puran, that's the abode of Krishna. So there's all these lokas that are described in the Shiv Puran.
Very interesting, because in Devi Puran, there's a story where she takes Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and she shows them that here I am and here you are, you are.
Yes, multiple universes.
Multiple, even in Vishnu Puran, Vaikunth, it is in the form of bubbles. So what do you find similar?
In terms of the depictions in the Purans, I feel there's an underlying similarity, because these are beyond the material creation.
True.
These are the spiritual realms.
True.
So in the spiritual realm, there's different locations where all these entities, the deities, or different forms of the Parabrahm live,
So what I'm understanding is, no matter what Puran you're reading, if I'm reading Devi Puran, she is the main character.
Yeah.
Shiv Puran, but they all are one.
Yes.
And I think in every Puran it comes to a conclusion that everything is Brahman.
Yeah. In fact, in the Shiv Puran itself, there's a whole discussion where they say, where Shiva himself says that, Shiva, Brahma and Vishnu, they're all born from each other. And in every Kalpa is the day of Brahma. So Brahma's lifetime is humongous. It's huge. So every day of Brahma is called a Kalpa. And in each Kalpa, one of them appears first and the others manifest from him. So that is why in that Kalpa, that form of the deity is called superior. There's no competition. There's no confrontation actually between them. But for that particular Kalpa, and a lot of people don't realize this, that the Purans talk about the stories of one particular Kalpa. So Vishnu Puran talks about one Kalpa in which Vishnu appeared first. That is why he's supreme in all the stories that are included in that Puran. Similarly, Shiv Puran is written on the day, or is describing the incidences that happened in that day when Shiva appeared first as the lingam of fire. So that is a reason why there's different deities that are called supreme in different Purans. They are narrating the stories of different time periods. And again in Shiv Puran it is said that there's no competition between them. There's no difference between them. They're all coming from the same Parabrahma.
Which is your favorite Puran?
I actually find a lot of Purans very fascinating. But I would say Padma Puran is very poetic. In terms of understanding simplicity, I like Vishnu Puran because I think it's fairly simple to understand. There's not too many, deviations, and it's focused. It's more focused. And Shiv Puran, Skand Puran have so many stories. Skand Puran, I think, has many stories. But Padma Puran also, it has so many different narratives built into it, and they are so poetic. There's this incident where one of the asuras sends a messenger to Kailash, and his minions have seen Parvati, and they're like, she's the most beautiful woman in the world, and they go and run back to, I think it's Jalandhar, maybe one of the asuras, okay. And so Jalandhar sends his messenger Rahu to Kailash, and Rahu's smitten by the beauty of Parvati. But the scene, the way it is described in the Padma Puran, is so beautiful that he goes to Kailash, and Shiva has Karthikeya on his lap, and the Vasuki is around his neck, around Shiva's neck, and Karthikeya is fidgeting with Vasuki.
Beautiful.
So Vasuki is getting irritated, right? It's like how if you have a pet at home and you also have a child, how the child bothers the pet, So Vasuki as a pet is behaving like a pet. He's tolerating the kid, but then he realizes it's too much. He just slithers off Shiva's neck, okay? And he goes down, and Ganpati is there. So Ganpati's vehicle mouse is there. And he sees Vasuki coming down, so he hides. Yeah. And the entire episode, it's so playful. And so this Mushak hides, and then Kartikeya's vehicle is Peacock. So the Mayura, the Mayura is like standing guard there so that Vasuki does not attack the Mushak.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it's so beautifully depicted. And what they're trying to basically say is that, Kailash is the place where even the opposites come together, but so beautifully and so poetically described.
Beautiful. I personally believe that when people read the Puran, they just forget the meaning behind it.
Yeah.
They read it and they just want to conclude something without understanding the esoterics.
And people think these are just stories, these are fantasy stories. There's so much logic.
Yeah. Also, I believe that if you pick a Puranic story and start reading, you can relate it in our life.
Yeah.
And take the lessons.
Definitely.
That is the main goal of writing Puran.
Yeah, and especially Shiv and Parvati stories. You see, the way they fight, the way they argue. It's like any modern couple, right? Because Parvati is no pushover.
Yeah.
She has her own tantrums. She has her, she speaks her mind always, and she's quite headstrong.
Please tell us something more about Kailash Parvat and Maa Parvati. And the entire Shiv Parivar.
Kailash is the earthly abode of Lord Shiv and his family. But interestingly, that was not his first residence on earth. So the Purans, especially the Shiv Puran, mentions that Kashi was the home of Lord Shiv. And it was later, again, a lot of people wouldn't know this, that Kuber, the Lord of Riches. So Kuber prayed to Lord Shiv. And, in a previous birth, as well as in this birth, in the present birth, he prayed to Lord Shiv. And Shiva was so pleased with Kuber that to be close to Kuber, he moved to Himalayas. Because Kuber used to live in the Himalayas, in Alkapuri. So Shiva moved to Kailash to be closer to Kuber. Imagine, the kind of... And we don't realize when we talk about the biggest devotees of Lord Shiv, they're all random names that come to mind. Nobody thinks of Kuber. But imagine he moved to Kailash because of Kuber.
Very interesting.
But otherwise, originally he was living in Kashi. So that is why Kashi still holds a lot of importance, as his
How was your experience at Kashi?
So unfortunately, I haven't been to Kashi. Yeah, I have been
You
to.
have to go, then you're coming with us. Yeah.
I know. There's couple of misses. I think so when plans were made, but I couldn't go. So I think it will happen when the time is right.
What do you feel about Kashi?
I think, from the Purans and from the scriptures, other scriptures also mention Kashi a lot. So it is said to be the oldest city in the world, and oldest habitable city. And again, when you go into the history, unfortunately, our cities are so overcrowded, the excavations haven't happened. There's no way to prove that actually, it is true. But hundreds of scriptures wouldn't lie, when they're calling Kashi the oldest city, oldest living city.
True.
And Kashi has this, it's said to be existing at the tip of Shiva's trident,
Yes.
Shiva's Trishul. So the trident also has a lot of symbolism. The Trishul has a symbolism. Again, when we go to Shiva himself, you see everything exists in three.
Yeah.
In threes, right? The trident. Why a trident? Why not a simple spear? So again, the tilak that Shiva and Shiva devotees have, it has 3 lines, right? So 3 is actually referring to the past, present and future. So because Shiva is Kal, he's Mahakal, he's time himself. And the presence of moon on his forehead again indicates the same thing, because in Indian calendar, it is the moon that dictates the tithi, not the sun. So everything that Shiva, serpent indicates time, serpent of time, because it's eternal time, rather. So Shiva is Mahakal, he's associated with time, and his trident, Kashi being present at the tip of his trident, probably is trying to tell us the same thing. It's always existed, past, present and future. It will always be there. Even in the movie that recently came, Kalki, they've again shown Kashi, right? So in the future.
Yeah.
So that's why Kashi is important. And as I said, it was the original abode of Lord Shiv. And also there's multiple incidents that happen. There's a whole story of Devadas, the king. But there's also this beautiful story about Shiv and Parvati, since you asked about Parvati. They constantly fight on Kailash.
Yeah.
Okay?
Just showing the human mind.
They have this beautiful relationship. And there's this one incident in Shiv Puran or Skand Puran where they're playing dice. Okay, and a lot of depictions of them playing dice you'll see in the caves, especially in Maharashtra. There's a lot of ancient caves, 5th century, 6th century caves. And anywhere you find Shiva caves, you'll always find one panel where Shiv and Parvati are playing dice. It's there in Elephanta, it's there in Jogeshwari. So these incidents, they have been so inspirational for art, for architecture, for culture to develop. So both of them are playing dice, and apparently Parvati has been cheating. So Narada Ji comes there and he's the witness, and he's like, what are you doing? You're cheating. And so Shiva and Narad gang up on Parvati. And so she's livid, okay? And she says that I'm just leaving from here, And she leaves Kailash and she comes to Kashi. So then Shiva has to come and beg, because the lady of the house has left, there's no food being cooked.
Yes.
And everybody's starving. So then Shiva has to swallow his pride and he has to go to Kashi and beg for food. And that is the Annapurna roop that we talk about. But so many beautiful stories, and it also tells us how important the lady of the house is.
True.
So Shiv and Parvati, their stories actually give a glimpse into how a normal married couple, or, even if you're living together, how the relationship is. And the kind of cute instances, they have, the arguments, the disagreements, and how they patch up again. It's beautiful.
It is, you're talking about Narada Muni. I think he's very wrongly portrayed.
Yes.
Because he's one of the Dev Rishis.
Yes.
And I think he has been a catalyst in everything.
Exactly.
To get everything done.
You actually said the right word.
Yeah.
He's the catalyst.
He's the catalyst. And amazing his stories. I think that in future people talk right about him, because I think he's one of the anchors and very important role in every yoga he has.
No, unfortunately, things will only change when the depiction in the serials
Yes, I
changes.
think...
So unfortunately, serials, like I have had a little experience now, associated with this industry. I've seen, there's for TRPs, for a hook, for different angles, you need to have certain characters that are dubious. So, and the easiest is picking on Indra
Yeah.
and Naradmuni.
Naradmuni.
So you show them as
Yes.
mischief makers,
Yes.
and
Be-
that is the ploy that they
Yeah,
use.
and because out of the 3 rishis, there's only one Dev Rishi, and that is Narad Muni.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Exactly.
I
And
don't know.
he's actually like the first journalist in the
Yes,
world.
yes, he's the one, and
Right.
he's ahead of time because he has that power to go in any lok
In
and
any look.
not manipulate is the wrong term, but channelize the future of everything.
Because if something it has to happen,
Yes.
he just pushes it along.
Yes.
Like, okay, let's do it faster.
So I'm glad because every time I see Narad Muni on TV, I'm very sad because that is not him. We are wrongly
Yeah.
projecting one of the great rishis.
And it's on us. I think
Yeah.
it's our
True.
fault that
True.
we don't question, we don't counter, and
True.
we just swallow everything that is being thrown at us.
True.
Because we don't read, we don't
Yeah.
know what is the truth.
I'm very happy that at this time there's someone like you who's reading it, understanding it, and actually putting it out. Because I see many people reading and then just having another wrong understanding.
Yeah.
Tell me something about the Rudra roop of Shiv.
So interestingly, Bhavesh ji, the depictions of Lord Shiv are also multiple. In the Shiv Purana itself, you see multiple forms of Lord Shiv. And one of them is Sadashiv. So Sadashiv is considered the highest form in the universe. And he's depicted with 5 heads, generally. A lot of people don't understand, and we'll go deeper into it later if you want. But so Sadashiv is the highest form, and then to help Brahma in the creation process, one of the Shiva forms emerged from Brahma's forehead, who's called Rudra. So Rudra emerged from Brahma's forehead. And this happened when Brahma was creating, and he was like very frustrated because all the beings that he had created earlier and everything that Brahmaji has created is through his thoughts, through his mind. So they are called Manasputras. So the Manasputras that he created, the Kumars that he created, the Sanat Kumars, they were least interested in, propagating creation.
True.
And they were very highly evolved beings coming right from Brahma himself and the first creations of Lord Brahma. So he was very frustrated, and all the negativity that was inside him, the frustration, it emerged from his forehead in this dark purple colored child, Neel Lohit. And that child, because he was crying, so he says, Ma Rudra, don't cry. And that's why the name became Rudra, the one who's crying. And so Sadashiv is actually described as white in color. He's Karpura Gauram. And Rudra is Neela Lohit in color. And Rudra, then Brahma requests Rudra to help him in creation. And that's when Rudra manifests 10 more beings like him. So these are the 11 Rudras. Right in the beginning of creation, all this is happening. And Brahma realizes that all these beings, okay, great, they're propagating, but maybe, they're a little scary for the creation. We need a little more subtlety in the creation. They're like very loud forms. So all of them are like 3-eyed, and they are dark, and they are strong and very masculine. And Brahma requests Shiva again that I need the creation to become self-propagating. And that's when Rudra manifests from his left half, the female principle, the Shakti. So that's the first time we see the Ardhanarishwar. So for each of the Rudras, there's a Rudrani that emerges from his left half of the body. And that's when, when there are two opposites, when there's a male and a female principle in the universe, that is when the creation will become self-sustaining. So Rudra is, a lot of people understand Rudra only as a destructive power, but Rudra was also responsible for creation to become self-sustaining.
100%. You know what I was thinking when we talk about the Rudra and take it in Tantra Sadhana, it has 10 nadis running through your body.
Right.
And the 11th is a Shushumna.
Right.
So how everything is just put across is beautiful.
Yes.
And even when we understand the Tantra text or Puran, that underlining understanding is the same.
Yeah.
Because Ardhanarishwar coming is the Ida Pingla.
Yeah.
Sushumna. So just, the more you evolve, you understand that these are just different ways of explaining things.
Exactly. There's a lot of symbolism in the stories, lot of symbolism. And even, something as basic as Ganpati, the story of Ganesha's creation, when Parvati makes this boy to guard her chamber. So Ganpati is the guardian of Parvati, right? And in Tantra, when we talk about the Mooladhar chakra, the base chakra, where Kundalini actually resides, it's guarded by Ganpati. So, it's only when you start with Ganpati, and
Without his blessings and without
Yes.
his doing sadhana on him, you can't move ahead.
exactly. So there's multiple levels of symbolism, which we don't realize. People think, oh, how could this happen? How could it be a elephant-headed child? Go deeper. Try to see what they're
these
trying to
rishis
say.
were beyond time.
Yeah.
And what I believe in my understanding, they realized that we won't be that much evolved.
Exactly.
So they got everything in stories so that, spoon feeding.
Yes.
Now they can't spoon feed us so much, so at least we have to do a bit.
Yes. No, that's exactly what is written in the Purans as well. Ved Vyas ji wrote down the Purans only at the end of Dwapar Yuga. So, and it was precisely for this reason, because it is said that, he wrote down the Purans to make it easier for the people, the dumb people in Kali Yuga, to understand the concepts that are given in the Vedas and Upanishads. They are intellectual texts, and not many people will even try to open them, leave alone understanding them. But even exploring them becomes a little daunting for people.
Yeah, because reading Brahma Sutras, Vedanta, it's not for common people.
It's not. And you need to have a certain level of understanding to get there. And that understanding is provided by the Purans, because it makes it so simple to understand the concepts of karma, the concept of moksha, the concept of the purusharths, the ashrams, the fundamentals of Hinduism, you understand from the Puranic stories. And that's when you realize that, this, again, when we're talking about the Lokas, it clearly tells us there's multiverse, there's multiple universes. And now I think science is kind of catching up.
They're trying to get there, but I think, because once we talk about consciousness, it is something, a different ballgame altogether.
Yeah.
This is what I'm understanding. Have you experienced while understanding the Puran, a strong association with Vishnuji and Shivji?
So I find, and I'm kind of lucky in that way, I find myself very malleable in terms of whatever I'm reading. I'm completely engrossed in it. So even when I'm, following a ritual or a fast, I just think about that form of the deity. So when I'm reading about the Vishnu Puran, and my mind is completely absorbed with Vishnu, Lord Vishnu and his forms. And so in Navratri, I'm only focused on Devi.
But I think that is spiritual maturity, to understand that they all come from the same source.
They all come from the same source,
Yet that needs to be done at that moment. Because that tattva is the highest.
Exactly. That time is most conducive for the worship of that particular form of the deity. So you should do it. You shouldn't get stuck. A lot of people, unfortunately, in Hinduism, even today, there are a lot of people who keep fighting. That
it is very, very strange.
Yeah, which is completely against the philosophy of Hinduism.
We still get a lot of messages saying that, how can you worship this God, but you are this God? And I'm like, no, you have to understand that all are one.
Yeah.
What is required is done by them only.
Yes.
And I think without the blessings and the support of deity, you can't even worship them.
Yes,
that is when you understand that you're doing the sadhana.
Yes. And one deity will lead you to the other.
This is something very beautiful.
Yeah. Which people who are on spiritual path, they will realize.
They'll enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. They'll enjoy it, but they'll also realize that, my Ishdev used to be this, but now I'm gravitating towards another form of the God. And a lot of people ask me this question, why is it happening? It's like, you're just evolving. You're maturing in the journey.
And at the same time, the deity is helping you.
The deity is
They're
helping
connecting
you.
the dots.
Yes, they are taking you to a higher purpose. They're taking you ahead in your journey.
Can you share something about Karthikeya?
Oh, Kartikey is one of my favorite deities, and unfortunately one of the most underrated ones because a lot of people don't know about him.
Whenever I think about him, there is so much power.
Yeah.
And there is
He's
so
the
much strength.
Devasena-pati.
Yes.
Right? In two ways. He's the husband of Devasena.
Yeah.
And he's also the commander of the Deva's Sena.
Yeah. Why is he not out there? Like, what has happened?
I'm also not really sure, Bhaveshji, what exactly happened. Where did the disconnect happen, especially in the north? Because if you go into the historical times, there were the warrior tribes living in the northern part of the country. Those artifacts, the excavations, the coins, the sculptures, the oldest sculptures of Karthikeya actually come from the north.
Very interesting. This is something very
Which is,
interesting.
and it is surprising for a lot of people to know. You know, a lot of people think that Karthikeya Murugan is a southern deity, is a Tamil deity.
It's a very strong association now that Karthikeya means south.
Yeah.
Something very new.
Yeah, but you know, there's tribes like the Yodhaya tribes of ancient India, and they ruled what is now Haryana, the modern Haryana. And they were a military tribe. So it makes sense that they worship Karthikeya because he's the commander of Deva army. And they have multiple coins dedicated to Karthikeya, to Devasena, to Karthikeya's other forms. You know, there's Shakha, Vishakha, and Negamaya. So there are different depictions of Karthikeya you find in their coins. And there was this whole different dynasty, which was not even of Indian origin. You know, there was this dynasty called the Kushan dynasty. And there's a whole history behind it, which we'll not get into right now. But they were ruling at one time what is called the Bactrian kingdom, which was sort of the northern part of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. And this massive kingdom ruled by the Kushans, they were at the center of what used to be the Silk Route. So they had influences coming in from the Greeks. They had influences coming from the Buddhism that was rising at that time, and the Hindu deities that were there. And they were passing it on to the East, to China, to Japan, to Korea. So the entire Silk Route took Buddhism to these countries. And these people were bang there in the middle of it. And one of the kings, Kanishka, is probably infamous because there was this airline, which was hijacked, which was called Kanishka. But Kanishk is one of the most prominent members of this dynasty. And all these kings, his father, his grandfather, in fact, his descendants, there was one of his descendants who's called Vasudev. And they're not even Indian, imagine. And these guys, they worshipped all these Hindu deities. So the older ones, the first couple of generations, they had coins depicted to Shiva, to Karthikeya, to even Lakshmi, if I'm not mistaken. But they also had some Persian gods, Zoroastrian gods. They also had some Greek gods. But this king called Vasudev solely depicted Shiva in his coins.
Very interesting, huh?
Yeah, imagine. And these are some of the oldest gold coins that we find in the Indian subcontinent. The oldest gold coins are from the Kushan dynasty.
Our culture is so rich with everything.
And they depict Shiva, and you know how Dattatreya is depicted now with 3 heads.
Yes.
And he's standing with a cow. Yeah. That's how they depicted Lord Shiv. Because they were depicting Sadashiv. So the 5 heads, but on a coin, it's a 2D thing, so you can only show 3.
Yeah.
Right? So it's understood that, 4 heads or it would be 4 or 5 heads. But Mukhalingams, the oldest Mukhalingams you find are from Kushan times and a little before that. So Kushan times, and just to clarify, it's about the 2nd century CE. But even before them, the Yodhayas were in somewhere from the 5th century BC. They were ruling. They were governing that area. And later on, they got absorbed into the Maurya Empire, etc. But around 5th century, 4th century BCE, we are talking about, when the Yodhayas were there. Even 500 years before Christ, there were coins dedicated to Karthikeya. Imagine the history now, that we have.
The deities operate in their own ways. We know someone in Africa, and she was mentioning that there's a deity very similar to Kali. And she lives underwater. Mm-hmm. And she looks also like Kali.
Okay.
So I think they are operating in their own ways.
Yes.
But this is something very fascinating.
Yes. And all this history is not taught to us, unfortunately.
Yeah, because you're going to laugh, but whatever I learned in school, that is integration, then surds and all, I think it is coming no use anywhere.
No, but history also that is taught,
Yeah,
it can be made so much more interesting. When you tell it in a story form, it is supposed to be a story. It is his story. So why don't you tell it like a story?
And I think education system should make better human beings.
Yeah.
Not machines and competitive people.
That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah. That I can go on for a podcast for 2 days, but yeah. Asking you something very interesting. Tell me something about Sri Ram and Shiv. Or something about Sri Ram that connects to you?
So Sri Ram, I feel, is one of the most misunderstood beings in the modern times. One of the most misunderstood avatars, along with Parshuram. And again, a lot of people don't know that Parshuram Ji was originally called Ram. Right? It was only after he gained the axe from Shiva that he became Parshuram. But his birth name was Ram.
Very interesting.
And he is still quite misunderstood. A lot of people don't know why he became so violent and what was the need. Yeah. So that's why I wrote the book on him. But Sri Ram also, when you start judging his life wearing 21st century glasses, that's when, you start coming up with all these judgments. Which are not based on the original Valmiki Ramayan. You have watched some series, you've read some article, and you're forming your own opinions. But Sri Ram behaved in the perfect way in every single situation, in every relationship that he had in life, including that with Sita. He did whatever he did, no one else could have done.
No, I personally believe that keeping dharma ahead first and leaving everything behind, it is impossible for people like us.
Yes.
We just talk about it. We are very selective.
Yes.
But I think he showed it to us.
He showed
and
it.
We can't accept
he
it.
showed
so
it by example.
Yeah.
And we find it difficult to, digest that somebody could have preferred his citizens over his own family, because, we are all used to seeing nepotism, right? Even in politics, there's so much nepotism. You see dynasties coming and going in every state of India. So we find it difficult to understand that there could be somebody who's left his family for the sake of his citizens' happiness. But that's exactly what he did. When he was required to save his wife, he went to all the lengths. He crossed, the entire Deccan plateau. He made alliances with strangers, the Vanas he had never met. And he could have taken the shorter route, right? He could have just taken help from Vali. Vali had already defeated Ravan.
Yeah.
So, he could have easily just gone to Vali and said that I need your help and, I'll support you and you remain the king. But he was again supporting Dharma. He knew what Vali had done was wrong. So, he still did not take a shortcut. He said, I'll go the longer way, but I will do it as per Dharma.
And even for a minute, I think there was no giving up attitude or no everything Dharma. It is very difficult. I think whenever I see our problems and we just go to Raman, I realize that
we are nothing.
We are nothing.
In fact, the same thing happened in the Mahabharata. A lot of people don't know that Ramayana is told in the Mahabharata at least 2 times.
True.
And it's when Yudhishthir and all, they're all in exile and he's lamenting that, why has all this misery fallen on us and all that. And that's when I think Dhaumya Rishi or Lomash Rishi, one of them, he tells Yudhishthir the story. He says that you think you are, you're facing difficulties. I'll tell you the story of a person who actually, imagine a guy, a young man who's about to become the king the next morning. And, he's told that you have to relinquish everything and go to the forest.
Would love to do a podcast in Ramayana because I have so much to share about it. But people at the same time are questioning Sri Ram. But when we talk about Krishna Bhagavan, he is perfect.
Yeah.
At such an extreme level that you can't accept that also.
Yeah. So people question Krishna also. People have all sorts of weird doubts and questions because none of them actually reads, unfortunately. And, even if you read the Ramayana, there's so many versions. So you form opinions basis whatever you've read. This Ramayana itself was so popular. It is still so popular that entire Southeast Asia has its own versions. They have dance performances, they have ballets, they have puppet shows. It's a national epic in many of the countries in Southeast Asia. And each of our states has its own version.
Yes, true.
So when you know the local version, your own, regional version, and you don't know what is written in the Valmiki Ramayan, that is when the confusion happens. Because the original historical text is Valmiki Ramayan, who was he was there at that time. And he was a contemporary.
Simultaneously it was, yes.
Yeah, he was a contemporary. So he's written on everything as he saw happening. But the misconceptions come a lot of times from the regional versions, and people also don't try and find out why it has been done. For example, in the Bengali version, the Kritibas Ojha version, you have the entire episode of Sahasra Ravan, where Sita herself turns into Kali
And
to kill Sahasra Ravan, who's a bigger demon than Ravan also. So that shows the influence of Shaktism, in that region. So everywhere there's a different subtle influence that you see. And it is also relevant to the times that were there, the society that was there at that time. Tulsidas ji, modified Ramayana majorly.
I have heard a lot about Tulsidas ji modifying, and I have followed the Valmiki Ramayan.
Yeah.
Very deeply.
Yeah.
And now recently, few months ago, I was going through how Sita Ma converts into Kali and all. So there's so many understandings, but Valmiki Ramayana is the closest, because I think I've sat with it, absorbed it again and again. So that association is.
Now, I would urge everybody who really wants to understand what Sri Ram was about and how actually Ramayana happened to pick up the Valmiki Ramayana. Because there's translations available.
It starts only when he starts crying and seeing the birds, and when he goes into that. It's so profound,
Yes. That is the inspiration for
That
Valmiki.
is where it starts, and I think you have to read it again and again to absorb at least 0.1%. Otherwise, we forget everything.
Yeah.
Tell me something about Maa Kali, because she is my everything.
Yeah.
So what is your understanding? And
So again, if we go back to the Purans, because I make Purans the basis for all the
I'm loving
beliefs.
It. Yes.
So Kali is, again, this will come as a surprise to a lot of people, that Kali or Parvati is said to be the Maya of Vishnu. Right? So she's not the energy of Shiva. She's the Yog Maya of Vishnu. So in the Purans, it is mentioned that, the first mention of Kali or Ratri or Nidra is when, at the beginning of creation, when Madhu and Ketab arise. They're the first demons, to arise, and they're attacking Brahma. And Brahma is praying to Lord Vishnu, who's in his Yog Nidra. And he's praying to Lord Vishnu to help because there's no one else. And so from Vishnu emerges this goddess, who is the Nidra goddess, the Yog Nidra goddess, but she is the power, she is the Maya of Lord Vishnu. And she is the dark goddess. She is Ratri, she is Kalratri, she is Kali. And she then, as soon as she emerges, Lord Vishnu wakes up. And then he kills Madhu and Ketab. But indirectly, it is Kali who makes it happen. But Kali again emerges from Parvati in various forms. Even from Sati. In fact, there's this whole story about Sati. You want to say something?
No, say, I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it.
So there's this concept of Dash Mahavidyas.
Yeah. I was just about to say, but you end up no, so yeah.
So Dash Mahavidyas are manifestations of Kali. They're manifestations of Sati actually. And as I was saying earlier, that Parvati is no pushover.
Yeah.
So Parvati's previous birth was Sati, and she was the same fiery, lady. And when the Daksh Yagna happens, there's this one story where Sati is livid that, she's not been invited. But she's also angry at Shiva that why is he not allowing me to go? Yeah. And why is he not supporting my decision to go? And then Shiva finally gives up. He says that, okay, do whatever you want. And he's exasperated. He knows what's coming, right? Yeah, he doesn't want her to go.
Yeah, there's a very beautiful scene in the Puran when there's a moment when he knows everything is happening and he's just internalizing.
Yeah. And he doesn't want her to go, but Sati is angry. Yeah. And she manifests these 10 goddesses who surround Shiva. Imagine.
It's a very beautiful scenario,
Yeah, and one of them is Kali.
Yeah.
But then again in Parvati story also, we see Kali emerging multiple times. And even before that, actually, when Sati, perishes in the fire, in the yogic fire that she creates, then Shiva breaks a lock of hair, right? Yeah. And he just breaks it, and Veerbhadra and Bhadrakali emerge. So again, we see Kali emerging there. And there's another beautiful story. Actually, I should share that story. Okay, so because we were talking about Shiva and Parvati and their, fights and arguments.
Yes.
I think I'm just revealing a lot of surprises, and people, would... I hope people will be inspired to go and check the Purans because it's all there in the Purans, okay? So in the Shiv Puran, there's this incident when Parvati, a lot of people see Parvati as a fair goddess, right? Yeah. That's how she's depicted. But when she is in the womb of Mena, her mother Mena, Brahma actually requests Kalratri, the Nidra Devi, to go and manifest her in a dark color. So that primeval Yogmaya, she's actually, morphing with the baby who's inside the womb of Mena. And she turns her dark in color. So Parvati, when she's born, she's actually dark in color. And Lord Shiv is white in color. And we are so used to seeing them in the opposite way. But this is actually how it is mentioned in the Puran. And they get married and they're still in the same form. And it is once that, this incident happens when Shiv is just being poetic. He's being very romantic. Yeah. And he's kind of teasing Parvati. And he says that, since I am so fair and, you're so dark, it looks as if, I'm like a sandalwood tree and you're like the serpent coiled around the tree. So he's trying to give out some similes, but Parvati gets offended. Yeah. She says, what do you mean to say that I'm dark? And, that's when she's livid. She's like, and she was trying to calm him down, like any husband, he would be like, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I just mean to say that, we are perfectly complementary to each other, complementing each other. And he says that, don't take my word seriously because we exist beyond these physical forms. We are eternal soulmates. Why are you getting angry? Yeah. But Parvati is like, no, now you've, hurt my ego. Now I will come back only when I become fair. Yeah. So, so there's this whole incident and, then she goes to meditate and she prays to Brahma. And again, such a beautiful, beautiful depiction of the interaction between Brahma and Parvati. When Brahma appears and he says that you are the Jagat Mata, why are you praying to me? You can do anything that you want. And she says that I am related to you in 3 ways. Since you called me Jagat Mata, you are my son, right? Because everything has emerged from Shakti, right? So the first relationship is like you are my son. Second relationship is because you were the father of Daksh, right? So, and Sati was Daksha's daughter. So you are like my grandfather, right? And you are also my father-in-law because Rudra emerged from your forehead. So there's 3 relationships that I have with you. So basis that relationship, I'm asking you to do this for me. And he says, please tell me what do you want me to do? And Parvati says, I want to be fair. Yeah. And he says, done. So the goddess Nidra, who had merged with Parvati in the womb, she actually separates out. Yeah. And because she emerges from Parvati's tissues, which are called Koshikai, in Sanskrit and Hindi. So she emerges from the Koshikai, that is why she's called Kaushiki. Oh, beautiful. And this Kaushiki goddess is identified with Kali. So the multiple stories of Kali. I would say, Gauri and Kali, they are the 2 sides of the same goddess. They're the same. True. When, it's the angry form and the domestic calm form is Gauri. And the fierce independent one is Kali.
Yeah, and when we do a sadhana and when you read the Puranic stories, it is very evident that Shakti is that energy which is always ready to full. And when you read about the Dashamavadyas and you do your sadhana, whatever is written is so true. Yeah. They are like this, they operate, they have their own mind, they will get things. It is amazing how they have decoded, It is a blessing that the rishis have given us so much.
Yes. It's a blessing to be born in this country.
It is. I think Bharat is something which...
And we are so lucky, so fortunate that all these thousands of years of wisdom is available today. Yeah. I think we are blessed to be in this time because, if you go back even 50 years back or 20 years back, all this was not available.
Not there.
It was tied up in, manuscripts. It was, you had to get access to a library to, read all these scriptures. They were not available online. Today, everything is available.
And no matter what, I don't know what people are saying, but if we understand what is written and we do our sadhana, this such everything is just falling into place.
Yes.
And you will start reading and you will realize that no, this is happening.
Yeah.
So they have gone through it. These are not just stories coming out from nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think at that state, you don't need to talk. You just experience the beauty and live it.
Exactly. I think that's why, you see a lot of people who are mature in the path of spirituality, you will hardly see them talking. It's only the beginners who will be showing off, will be throwing around their weight.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Tell me something about Hanuman Ji, because Hanuman Ji is...
So we're covering the entire pantheon.
Yeah. Last one, because Hanuman Ji is coming into our life and he's always been around. But I think he is one of the deities that when we just call out, I think Hanuman Ji and Ganesh Ji are the first one there.
Right.
Though they were not worshipped at a very big, and they were called the local deities and the deities of the villages and all, but I think they have found a very high place.
Yes.
And I believe they're the Jagrat Devatas. So
definitely.
we just come. And Hanuman Ji is something, people think that Hanuman Ji is very nice and soft and all, he is. But the more I'm understanding him with time, I'm realizing that he is something beyond.
Yeah, he has a big role in Tantra.
He has a very big role everywhere. I think Shiva has taken forms as Hanuman.
Yes.
At the same time, he connects to all the other deities.
Yeah.
And in Tantra, of course, he has a very powerful role to play.
Yeah.
What is your... And I'm sure, did you have experiences with Hanuman Ji?
Not really, but I've always kind of, I don't know why, when I was growing up also, I was chanting the Hanuman Chalisa, so I always thought of him as a friend. Yeah. I never saw him as a deity. Yeah. I always thought of Hanuman Ji as an older brother. Yeah. And he's like the strong older brother that I always wanted, because I'm the older sibling in my family, and I always thought the younger ones have the best time, because, they're pampered and the parents are already well versed in raising a child, and all that the younger one wants gets fulfilled. So I always felt that it was very unfair that I don't have an older sibling, I'm not the younger one. And I always thought of Hanuman Ji as that older brother, because he's protective, and if you just call his name, he's supposed to be there, and he's living on this planet even today. He's a Chiranjeevi. So you feel that connect. Yeah, true. With Hanuman Ji. And I think the very fact that as a child, he was still a toddler when he jumped into the sky to eat the sun. What can be more powerful than that? And a lot of people laugh at these stories. How can he eat the sun? It's not about him eating the sun. It's about the power that he had, that he could jump from the earth right up to, reaching up to the sun, which you cannot withstand because of its heat. Our satellites cannot withstand. Our Voyagers, the probes that NASA also sends, they're not able to go. The Aditya Yan, it's still at a very safe distance from the sun, where it will not get burnt. So the whole idea that he was able to jump so close to the sun, it made me wonder what kind of power this child had. And after that incident, when Indra hits him and of course he falls, and that's the reason for his name, Hanuman. Yes, Hanuman, Hanu is jaw. Yes. And his jaw was injured in that incident. That's why he's called Hanuman. And he gets blessings from all the deities. That made him even more powerful.
Imagine the Hanuman Ramayan.
Yeah.
He sacrificed his own experiences with Sri Ram just to make, not to upset Valmiki Ji. So when people talk about bhakti, I think it's very easy to, I have surrendered. No,
not at all. We're not even 1/100th of that, because the way he was, all the incidents that he was much, much more powerful being than Ravan.
Yeah. He could, in my opinion, he could just
easily.
Anytime.
But he still did the right thing. He never misused his powers. Never. Yeah, except in childhood, when he gets cursed by the rishis. But never did he misuse his powers. With so much strength, with so many siddhis that he had, he could have easily become the ruler of the Trilok himself. Easily, imagine. But that is what he teaches as the humility. Yeah. Even with all the power that you have to know your goal. And his goal was bhakti, his goal was serving Ram, not becoming the ruler of the world. Yeah. There's so many lessons to learn from Hanuman.
So many lessons. Constantly, I think whenever anyone talks about bhakti, I would say just read about Hanuman Ji, you'll come to know what bhakti is, because zero ego and so much maturity in every act.
Yeah.
One message you would like to give to people who are walking on the path?
I am nobody to give a message. I myself am a seeker, and I'm still, learning
That is, you're
to
being
tread.
very humble now.
No, not at all, Bhavesh. Seriously, and there's so many faults in me, and there's so many, challenges I'm yet to overcome in my own spiritual journey. But I feel the only lesson that I have learned is never to give up. Because as Arjun also asked that, to Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, and he says that, what if I start walking on the path that you are telling me to? And, and I start distancing myself from all the pleasures of the world. So then I've let go of that. And here also, if I'm not able to reach the end, then I'm actually nowhere. I'm stranded. I'm neither here nor there. And the most beautiful thing that I find in Bhagavad Gita is this, that Krishna tells him that whatever progress you make in the path of spirituality, God remembers it. The next phase of life, the next birth, or wherever you land, you will start from that stage. You will not have to go back to zero.
True.
So God is helping you progress in this journey. We just have to be consistent, and we will lose our way. We will go back to, the hedonistic things and, the pleasures of life. But it's on us finding the way back on to this path, and it's a everyday struggle, right? Everyday struggle. But don't look at it as a struggle. This is something which is beneficial for you in the when you look at it from a long-term perspective. People, very fond of saying that YOLO, you only live once. And you don't.
Yeah, true.
There's umpteen instances, umpteen cases. There's hundreds of stories in our Purans, and there's so many past life regression instances. There's people, I personally know a family, whose child actually used to tell them about their his past life and how he died. It's a child, a 2 or 3 year old child. How would he have all these concepts in mind? So don't think it's all made up, it's all fictional. No, this is how the universe works. The cycle of sansar, the law of karma, it's there. So be very cautious or conscious about how you're behaving and how you conduct yourself. I think that is the lesson that I've learned.
Very true. If someone wants to start reading Puran, where should we start from? So,
as I said, initially, the Vishnu Purana is one of the most easy to understand. It's one of the simplest. It's not very big compared to many other Purans. So, I recommend Vishnu Puran, and it's also relevant for this Kalpa of the Varaha Kalpa. So, Vishnu Puran, I would suggest. But after that, I would suggest pick up one Puran for Shiva and one Puran for Devi, so that you have a holistic view.
Start with Vishnuji, Shivji, and then comes to
Shivji and Devi, whichever way. But Vishnu Puran, because it is simpler and shorter, first you can pick it up, and then maybe Devi Bhagavad Puran and Shiv Puran or Linga Puran. Shiv Puran, I personally like Shiv Puran more.
Even I like.
So I would suggest that. And I forgot to mention earlier about Mahashivratri. There's a very interesting thing mentioned in Shivaratri, in the Shivaratri story in the Shiv Puran, where it talks about a hunter. It's a very famous story that a lot of people would know, but maybe a lot of people wouldn't. Yeah. So let me just repeat it here. So there's this hunter who's looking for a wild boar, and he kills animals left, right, and center. And he's hunting for this boar, and it's close to evening, and he climbs this bilva tree. Yeah. And he's waiting for the boar to emerge. He knows that the boar is around. And he's just poised with his bow and arrow, and he's just waiting for it to become visible. And in the process, he's just sitting there, and the boar is not emerging. So he's shifting his position. In the process, the leaves of the bilva tree, they fall down, and there's a shivling right below. It's a natural shivling which is right below. And then he's having water, and some of the water drips down onto that shivling. And he's hungry, and he's awake the whole night waiting for the boar to emerge. And in the morning, still the animal hasn't emerged. He climbs down. Just by virtue of fasting that day and night, being awake the whole night, offering bilva leaves to the Shivling unknowingly, and offering water to the Shivling, he gains the merit of, going to Shiv Lok. And something similar happens with his wife as well. And, the story actually tells us that you may be anybody. You may come from any background. It is not that you have to be a learned Brahmin. You could be an outcast. You could be a hunter. You could be the most degraded person in the world because, you're taking lives. A hunter is just killing every day. So you could be the lowest of human forms, but you can still achieve the highest of Lokas by following Shivaratri. And another interesting thing that they mention is when we talk about the way, because you're supposed to be awake all night.
I was going to ask you the question. One takeaway from Mahashivratri. I'm glad you're answering everything. So, yeah.
So, I think the story actually, this hunter story is the most commonly found. It's there in Skand Puran as well.
Yes.
But the rituals related to Mahashivratri, it asks you to be awake all night. Yes. You could be singing bhajans, you could be interacting, there could be a kirtan, you could be dancing, for God, and you're fasting. So, for Trayodashi, the one day prior, you eat one meal so that it's out of your system by the time the Chaturdashi starts. And in the Chaturdashi, when you start praying in the night, you first take a sankalp.
Yes.
That, whatever I'm doing is for you, Shiva, and please forgive, whatever mistakes I make and help me complete this.
And I like it how nicely listening to everything.
And every prahar, there's 4 prahars in the night. So every prahar, you're supposed to worship the Shivaling with different paraphernalia.
You won't believe we are doing this.
Oh, wow.
We are doing this on the night, especially.
Amazing.
Yeah, and amazing how it's falling into place because the 4 prahar will be done by offering jal, by offering ghee, by offering honey.
Right.
And it is mentioned in the Shiv Puran also.
Yes. And there's different fruits. Actually, we don't even know what, the significance of so many things. There's when you start, I think you offer rice, cooked rice. You offer tambul.
Yes.
The betel leaf, and in the second prayer you offer citron fruit.
Yes.
A lot of people don't even know what citron is now. Maybe people who drink might know citron flavor.
But it is amazing how the rishis knew that this is what is prayer to Shiv.
Yeah.
And when I was going through the Shivling, I realized that this is very difficult how to do it.
Yeah.
But there was a point when I came across and it was beautifully written that Shiv is Jal Priya, Abhishek Priya and Bilva Priya.
Yes.
Or if nothing, just your tears are enough of bhakti.
Yes.
And I'm like...
Nothing elaborate is needed.
And I'm like, what are we throwing tantrums that he'll punish us and all?
Yeah.
If you have right bhakti, he'll offer just Manas Puja, which is the highest.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
I just wish people read and understand, and I'm so happy that it's his blessing that you have picked up,
No, it's a blessing that we are talking for Shivaratri, on Shivaratri. I think it's an opportunity
grateful
that God has gifted us.
Very grateful for sharing insights about points which are mentioned in the text and giving a very practical approach and showing us that there is no fear. Just walk on the path, go ahead, and the deity will take care.
My pleasure, Bhavesh ji. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to connect with your audience. And I hope people will be inspired to read and find out more.
Vineet ji, this is not the end because I'm getting inspiration to talk about Sri Ram and Hanuman Ji, but it will open up, I'm sure.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Very, very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.